Gilad Shalit has been reunited with his family. An emotional day in Israel. Everybody is riveted to their televisions, radios, watching as this story unfolds. At the same time, in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, which is controlled by the terrorist organization known as Hamas, they are celebrating the release of approximately 400 and something prisoners. That is the first shift. And soon after this, once Gilad is released and so forth, they will get another batch. There will be a total of 1,027 Hamas terrorists, or Hamas and various other terrorists, released from Israeli prisons So why is there a mixed emotion on this day and about this deal? I have mentioned that it is one that we can think of in the sense of the Hebrew expression Gilu Bire'adah. We rejoice and yet we tremble in fear. And the reason is because the deal that was made, where one Israeli soldier is released for 1,027 terrorists, is for many Israelis a big mistake. Let's remember that Gilad Shalit was kidnapped by Hamas for one purpose only. Because Hamas and the other Arab terror organizations like the Hezbollah in Lebanon know that if they hold him alive long enough, and they did hold him alive, they made sure to keep him alive and not to kill him, not to beat him, not to torture him, physically torture him. Of course, they kept him. I mean, it's torture enough to keep someone in a dungeon for 5.5 years in some cellar somewhere. But they didn't torture him the way we have come to expect all the Arab countries to torture our prisoners, meaning beatings and other physical harm. They know that if they hold him alive long enough, Israel will, and let's underline the words, will eventually release, at this point, over 1,000 Hamas terrorists who will then be reunited with their families and return to the ranks of the murderers. Turn to the ranks of the Hamas, an organization whose goal is the destruction, the annihilation of the state of Israel. In the past, years and years ago, decades ago, Israel taught the entire world that one does not negotiate with terrorists, because if one does, you only open yourself up to the terrorists becoming greedier and greedier every time. And that's exactly what happened. It was Yitzhak Rabin, several decades ago, who made the first such deal for one soldier whose name was Chezi Shai. He was being held by a group in Lebanon headed by Ahmed Jibril, and Israel released hundreds and hundreds, I believe close to 1,000 terrorists. Since then, Other Israeli governments have followed in Yitzhak Rabin's footsteps, releasing hundreds and hundreds of terrorists, in one case for bodies, 3 bodies, in another case for bodies and 1 civilian who was reckless and kidnapped. Elchanan Tenenbaum was somewhat of a criminal as well. And so the warning that our rabbis taught us from the days of the Mishnah, that when a Jew is kidnapped, one may not pay more than his value to the kidnappers, because it will encourage more and more kidnappings and the higher and higher prices. That warning seems to have come true. And so both the Hezbollah and the Hamas plan out and execute sophisticated military actions in order to kidnap Israeli soldiers and hold them for negotiations for the release of hundreds and hundreds of terrorists. So that's reason number 1, that people in Israel, many, are against the deal. Reason number 2, and this goes to the fact that until some point in history, Israel never agreed to release terrorists who murdered other Jews. Terrorists who murdered Jews were not released. They were called imdam al hayadayim. They have blood on their hands. In this deal, there are many, probably dozens, who are being released who have blood on their hands. In fact, there is the iconic picture from relatively early in the Second Intifada, in the second uprising, of a lynching that took place of 2 Israeli soldiers who made a mistake and entered an Arab town. Famous picture of an Arab murderer standing in the window of the building from which they threw the body out, holding up the palms of his hands outstretched, soaked in blood, the blood of the Jewish soldiers that they killed. Imdam al hayadayim mamash. They, the murderers of those 2 soldiers, are being released. The people who planned and carried out the kidnapping and murder of Nachshon Waxman are being released. The people who planned and carried out the kidnap and murder of Israeli soldiers Ilan Saadon and Avi Sasportes are being released. The terrorist murderers who killed 2 children, Ronen Kramni and Lior Tobol, an Israeli taxi driver, Rafi Doron, and an Israeli soldier, Yehoshua Friedberg, he is being released. Members of the group that killed Israeli soldier Nisim Toledano is being released. The people that murdered the yeshiva boy Chaim Kerman are being released. People involved in the terrorists involved in the murder of Shachar Simani and Yaron Chen are being released. People involved in the bombing of the Moment Cafe are being released. People involved in the bombing in the luncheon area of the Hebrew University in Har HaTzofim are being released. These people, although they, I mean, this is almost surreal, but when they are released, they must sign a declaration that says they will not return to terrorism. It's a joke. I don't even know why they asked them to do that. What are they going to do when they capture them again? They're going to hold up the paper and say, "But you signed." Anyway, they make them sign this notice, but everybody knows that these people are going right back. In fact, once they're released, they say so. We're going to go right back and kill more Jews. And that's why so many in Israel are against this deal. The law in Israel states, by the way, that when the government makes such a deal, they must post on the internet so that the public can see the entire list of who is being released, when he was, how long he would have been in jail for, and what are the main things that he was convicted of. So the first group, the 477 prisoners that were released in stage 1 now, their names were released last week. I went on the internet to look at it. Not going to mention their names. There's no reason to mention their names. Yimach Shemam v'Zichram. May their name be blotted out. Number 1 on the list, premeditated murder. Number 2 on the list, premeditated murder. Number 3, premeditated murder. Number 4, premeditated murder. Number 5, premeditated murder. Number 6, premeditated murder. Number 7, premeditated murder. Number 8, connected to premeditated murder. Number 9, premeditated murder. Number 10, attempted murder. Number 11, premeditated murder. Number 13, attempted murder. And so forth. 29 pages long this list is. And that's only the first set. Having said all that, you're probably asking yourself, so why did they do this? And the answer is, it's a complicated answer, but to try and convey it briefly, there has been this unwritten pact that the government of Israel has with its soldiers and the families. If you're captured, we will do everything to bring you back. I don't know when this unwritten pact began seeping into the Israeli psyche, but it is there. Additionally, the Shalit family did what every parent would do. They did not sit silent for 1 minute during the 5.5 years. They hired PR firms. They did huge, massive campaigns through advertisements, through rallies, through marches. They used the media very successfully to put pressure on the Israeli government to make a deal at whatever cost for their son. And even those who are against this deal, even those whose loved ones were killed by these terrorists, for example, Nachshon Waxman's mother, have said, I would do the same thing. In fact, Nachshon's mother said, the deal is disgusting, I hate it. But releasing the murderer of my son will not bring him back, but it will bring Gilad Shalit back to his mother. And so the public in Israel, through this campaign, became more and more vociferous and pressured the Israeli government to release Gilad Shalit no matter what the price. And for 5.5 years, this deal, more or less in this form, close to this form, was on the table for 5.5 years. And until now, the Olmert government and now the Netanyahu government rejected it for the reasons we discussed. But at some point, the public pressure just builds and builds. And with the support of the media, the government reaches a point that they just can't stand up to that pressure any longer. And the reason that most people in Israel join this pressure is because each one of them thinks in the back of their mind or in the front of their mind that this could be their kid. And if it was their kid, they would turn the world upside down to get him out. And so you now are left with this heart-wrenching, excruciating dilemma. Do I do something to bring this boy back to his parents? Something that will risk the lives of other Jews, without a doubt. There's almost no doubt in anyone's mind in Israel that these terrorists that are being released will kill in the future, maybe even in the near future. And then what have we done? We've just exchanged one life for another, or one life for many others? Or do we do the deal? And so the government did the deal. Now the voices in Israel are, one, well then, if so, if every government is going to ultimately cave into the pressure, even if they think in the long term it's wrong, then let us instate the death penalty for murderers. For terrorist murderers, let us have the death penalty. Let them know that they will never be released. Don't forget that the murderers, those who murdered the Fogel children, were sitting in court the other day smiling because they know that in a few years they'll be released in a similar deal. So voices in Israel today say, let's have the death penalty. I don't know if that's going to happen. But that's one call. Another is for there to be some sort of a public debate and committee that will come to the government with a suggested, what they call a little flippantly, price list, which will then bring to the Knesset to pass a law that says, from now on, if an Israeli soldier is kidnapped or if an Israeli is kidnapped, the government of Israel may not pay more than X, or may not release murderers, and so forth. I've tried to give a balanced portrayal, to give expression to the voices in Israel over the past few days. Took a little time. I hope that I've brought to you some of what Israel is going through today and over the past few days. If you'd like to read, you can read Mrs. Waxman, Nachshon Waxman's mother's articles. I believe it's in the Jerusalem Post, jpost.com, as well as Sherry Mendel, whose son Kobe Mendel was murdered at a young age. Her article is called A Mother's Pain, and that's on JPost. so much more to talk about, but I think we've covered most of the points. There are many more. Life in a Jewish state and the excruciating, heart-wrenching decisions that a Jewish government has to make. Three songs that I would like to present to you now after this conversation. The first is called Shir Lismoach. It's also known as Malki's song. It was written by Malki Roth, who at the age of 15 was murdered on August the 9th, 2001 by a bomber, a homicide bomber who walked into the Sbarro restaurant in the middle of Yerushalayim. The planners of that murderous attack are being released today as well. The Roth family petitioned to the High Court in Israel to take him off the list. But, of course, that really didn't work. So in tribute to her and to her family, to all those who were murdered and to their families who are suffering so much today, we'll play Malki's song. Followed by Hu Yivarech, which is a version of the Tefillah L'Chayalei Tzahal, the prayer that we say every Shabbat for the well-being of Israel's soldiers. And the last of the three, Chazak Ameinu, we stand as one, from the groundbreaking Voices for Israel double album that came out during the Intifada and was dedicated to the victims of the Arab uprising and war of terror that they brought upon Israel during that time. It's a difficult day and yet a very happy day. As I've said, Gilu B'Re'ada. My name is Meir Weingarten. I'm in for Nachum Siegel on this Tuesday morning. Chol HaMoed Sukkot. Here's Malki's song.